Captain Alexander MacLeod was born in Glenelg, Scotland in 1769. He is significant because he was among the first of our ancestors, certainly on the Anderson-MacDonald side of our family, to settle in North America. There is no documentation that any military, government, or official body granted him the rank of captain. He seems to have bestowed it upon himself. In 1792, Captain MacLeod received a grant from King George III of England for land in the New World, specifically in what is now Glengarry County in southeastern Ontario. The grant was for 20 parcels of 200 acres each. For historical perspective on the time, consider, in 1792, George Washington was the President of the United States. King George III was the same King George III who imposed the Stamp Act on the New World colonies. It resulted in the Boston Tea Party. And in 1792, England was at war with France. Captain MacLeod's vision was to recruit other MacLeods to embark on an arduous journey to a new world and a new start. While crossing the Atlantic was not a new thing by this time, it was still a dangerous venture. With his land grant in hand, he spent the winter generating interest among his own clan and several others around Glenelg, and by April 1793 he had 40 families committed to his venture, sharing the 20 parcels of land that King George III had granted. Besides several MacLeods, there were also McGilvarys, McPhees, McLennans, Campbells, McCoys, and Adewars. No one would consider a trip across the Atlantic without bringing along some doers. These 40 families departed Glenelg in April of 1793 for the port of Greenock near Glasgow. They set about chartering a brig and stocking it with their personal belongings and provisions to nourish them on their voyage across the Atlantic. On June 15, 1793, they set sail for Canada. This may be what their ship looked like. Imagine it with 40 families and a crew. Because England was at war with France, their brig was outfitted with cannon, muskets, and cutlasses. Several days into their journey, they encountered a ship which they believed to be French, and they pursued it. When they finally overtook the ship, it turned out to be a harmless Dutch merchant vessel. But they had a bigger issue by this time. The ship was leaking badly, and they decided to return to Greenock rather than to risk continuing the voyage. They spent 2 weeks in Greenock, where they were able to charter another brig, restock, and set sail. This may have been late July 1793. Just 4 days at sea, they encountered a severe storm that destroyed their ship's sails and upper masts. They returned to Lambeth, Scotland this time, had the ship repaired, and set sail just 3 days later. They finally arrived in Canada on about November 1st. It was severe cold and snowing, and one report said there was a foot of ice on the deck of the ship. It was too late in the season to venture up the St. Lawrence Seaway to Montreal, so they sailed into Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, formerly St. John's Island, to spend the winter. Captain MacLeod used this time planning the remainder of their voyage to their land in the New World. In May of 1794, the 40 families boarded schooners from Charlottetown and arrived in Quebec on June 4th. Then to Montreal, where they boarded King's boats, and then traveled by land to Lancaster in Glengarry County, where each of the 40 families took possession of their 20 parcels. After 2 years, they found the land too low and too wet for productive farming. It was the old, "I have some swampland in southeastern Ontario that I would gladly grant you." And they moved north to Lochiel, where they settled for good. Alexander MacLeod continued to serve his community. This historical plaque notes his achievements and his leadership in establishing the MacLeod settlement. It also notes that he served as a captain of the 2nd Regiment of the Glengarry Militia during the War of 1812, finally giving official legitimacy to the rank he carried most of his life. The plaque is located on Logan Glenelg Road in Lochiel Township in Ontario. Captain Alexander MacLeod died in 1850. I share this story for its history, for its family interest, and for its perspective on travel today, especially during the holiday season. We will encounter lines at airports, bad weather, delays, and other serious issues. I hope you will keep your patience and demonstrate the persistence our ancestor, Captain Alexander MacLeod, showed over 220 years ago when he brought part of our family to North America.